Cool.
The coffee's quite good.
Is it French by chance?
Yeah, it is.
Well, it must be the best then. Okay, so let's go to Joe, who's been once before, but so long ago you're almost new to everyone who's here today.
True. Hi everyone, kia ora. I'm Vincent's co-founder, so similarly very passionate about future of work and all that the future holds. So you know, one of the best things about lockdown has been, I think, is unlocking an amazing awareness for people that you can work remotely, you can build communities online. I think what you've done, Ryan's an amazing example of that. The worst thing about lockdown is nothing quite replaces that face to face. So I do miss that. Do miss the, you know, being able to give family a hug, that sort of thing. But yeah, we get on and do what we have to, right? So.
Exactly, we get on and do what we have to. And the thing I find about it is these times are really cool. I feel super energized, but as soon as I press end meeting and you all disappear, I'm like, oh! And you go back to that sort of, you know, the tumbleweeds rolling through the backyard feeling. But let's go to Victoria, who's also not new, but hasn't been here for a while.
Hello, nice to meet you all. I am an accountant by training. Did that many years ago, but have moved and navigated my way through marketing and into sales. I'm a mum of a 12-year-old daughter and a 13-year-old stepdaughter and two four-legged friends, a dog and a cat, and I live over on the shore. So I'm missing the beach. I'm missing my friends. But I'm enjoying the slower pace of life. You know, everything's sort of slowed down a little bit and there's no rushing to different things. So that's actually quite good. It means that you just breathe.
Well, talking about slowing down and not rushing, we should move over to Shandon to go next, because he did something like 70 international flights and was sleeping. His sleep time was in the plane. So this is the first time in 3 weeks that he's consistently been able to be at home. So also our AFQY sponsor for this Thursday. So Shannon, over to you.
Thanks, Ryan. My name is Chandan. I work for Duco Consultancy. I've got a son and a pet, which is a cockatiel. As Ryan mentioned, I'm having withdrawal symptoms from the airport. I haven't been to the airport for 3 weeks. I do travel a lot, but it is good, you know, just to be able to spend time with the family rather than just the weekends or odd days on the weekdays. So I'm actually loving it, being at home and extending it. So my work, I'm a business consultant. So my team is technology enabled, but I do a lot of focus on business consulting. So that's me. Thank you.
Cool. And we better get Te Omeka in while he's got his four-legged friend there. Didn't know you had a dog.
Yeah, Risby. Kia ora whānau, Te Omeka. I just work in the tech space and I try to crack funny jokes as often as possible. And I feel sorry for people that work for Microsoft currently. They might be in this room or something. But father.
You know Shemaine?
Oh yeah, just talking about Shemaine. Anyway, I'm at home with all my family, and the thing I love the most is every morning at about 8 o'clock or anywhere between 8 o'clock and 8:15. I have this little 4-year-old that comes running out and asks for a morning hug. I've been sort of missing that and haven't been able to do that for a while, and so I've been doing it for 2 weeks now. And yeah, it's a little thing, but it's the thing that I sort of enjoy most about my day. Just the hug with my daughter. And then the hardest thing for me is probably just not being able to sort of get out and go up north. I miss going up north. I normally head up to our family beach at times like this, just because it's by the sea. That's me, man.
Cool. So I'm not quite sure what the thing about Microsoft was, but as Shemaine is from Microsoft, and I'm not quite sure what it means, but maybe there's something happened, Shemaine? Or is Tiamika just trying to be funny and not?
Yeah, haven't hit the mark. But I remember this one time that I sat down at an AFQY down at car park, and we had a very long. Well, they were about, I don't know, a bottle deep. I can't remember who was with there, but there was a very strong competition between hosting companies, Microsoft and me being with site host. And that was the first impression I got from Shemaine.
Well, really, because the impression I got was trying to uncover how you're going to treat that big ass bite you got on your neck from visiting Queensland.
Okay, kids. All right, let's leave it there. So it's a little bit of competitiveness going on. That's all good. Yeah. I won't even make that joke. Okay, so Shemaine, you can introduce yourself.
Hello, I'm inappropriate. My name is Shemaine. Well, no,
That's AFQY Cafe. That's okay.
I am from Microsoft. I try not to go with that title when I go to events because it comes with a stigma. Some people like it. Some people are strongly against it. I'm a big fan of.
Well, I'll jump in there and I'll say, just to interrupt, that without Microsoft, we wouldn't have had Google or Linux or half the other stuff. So,
yes.
Out of people's passion to love it or hate it, it was the birth of a industry in my mind, because there was back in the 90s, there was quite a sort of hate and a distaste for Microsoft, and that's what made a lot of people go out and invent something different or try to, and that's what brought us or gave us the diversity of the tech industry we have now. And look who's still there. So I think Microsoft's got a lot to be thanked for, along with the balance of everything. So back to you with it's okay to be from Microsoft.
Yeah.
Because you are Shemaine, actually.
Yeah. Yeah, true. So I'm a cloud solution architect for AI and IoT at Microsoft, and what I do is I go visit customers and show them how to string things together, how to do code and peer programming. I'm enjoying this time in isolation because it means I don't have to travel, and also because I get to more than keep that 2 meter distance. I get to stay really the hell away from other people. Yeah.
Okay. Well, thank you very much, Dr. Bonholm. I always love springing that Shemaine's actually also a doctor, worked in the field of, was it sports and cancer?
Oncology. My specialty was oncology and sports recovery.
So yes, I find that absolutely fascinating. Doctor and then technology. So let's go. Who hasn't been? I'm thinking Sean down in Wellington. Over to you, brother.
So Sean Muller down in Wellington. I have a lovely wife, a 4-week-old son, a 4-year-old son, and a 12-year-old daughter at home. Yes.
Yeah.
God, he still isn't sleeping at night. He sleeps during the day and not at night, which is just.
See, he's on the time of he's on your native time, where the accent's from.
Yeah. Something. I have a feeling if I was there, he would be doing the same thing. You know what? I'm as busy, if not more busy, than I was before. So, I mean, for me, it hasn't slowed down, but I do a lot of government consulting work. So,
Be deep in it.
Yeah. There are a handful of businesses that I do consulting work with, and they're also doing government work. So yeah, I'm flat out. I think the best thing for me has been, I don't know. It's a good question. I've been reset some things that I wanted to do and been able to prioritize some things to get myself ready to move forward. It's also meant that I've been at home with the new baby because I'm a contractor, so I don't get paternity leave. So being here for my wife, I think, is a good thing. The bad thing is it's interesting. People are so busy that they're not actually taking the time to do things the right way. They're just doing things. And they're used to walking around on the floors and coming over and asking somebody, hey, should we do this way, or should we do this that way? They don't do that anymore. They just go and do stuff. And if they had good, reasonable strategies and architectures going forward, that would be a good thing. A lot of them don't. And so it's just knee-jerk reactions. So that's probably the good and the bad for me. But I'm in agreement with Shemaya. I get to stay the hell away from people. I'm an introvert. I like staying in my office and reading books and playing video games and staying completely away from everybody else.
Fair enough.
Hear to that.
Yeah. Well, it's been interesting listening. So I always forget to do this, but at every event I run, I'm Ryan Ashton. You probably know me as Ryan the Lion, or at least you've read it somewhere and thought, what's that about? The best part of lockdown is the same. Like, I've just really enjoyed the no rushing. You know, with working from the home office, used to go into the city for a meeting, and you know, it's almost like, oh my God, I've got to go 20 minutes travel or 40 minutes travel, depending on the day, to go to a 1 hour meeting. Oh, why?
That's because you live in Auckland. If you were in Wellington, it'd be 10 minutes.
Yeah, I know.
10 minutes to get to anywhere.
Yeah. So I'm quite enjoying it, and sort of been thinking about shit, what does happen when it goes back to normal? Will I still be able to get away with just meeting online? Will we still do this? Will we go back to AFQY in person? Will we do a mix of AFQY and whatnot? But all those other things. And probably the worst thing is I know, I guess
What will normal be like after this?
Yeah, well, that's the thing. I haven't really thought about what is the worst thing. I don't think there's anything that really jumps out at me. But there was a question after listening to people talk about having more time with their kids and not rushing around and living in airports and having time to, I think there's a couple of people talk about kids and stuff like that. I was thinking, you know, along with the world cleaning up in terms of rivers, smog, like there's been, that's the senior PR manager from Vector Comm sneezing on his call next door. What was I saying? Yeah, all the pollution, everything cleaning up. Like, apparently in China, they've now seen the mountains. So the smog's cleared, they can see the mountains. They're like, oh my God, there's mountains. All the view. So it's the question I was going to pose for the rest of the discussion was, what will stay the same from lockdown, or what would be good to stay the same, and what do we think won't?
I think property will be different now, because I just got off a call yesterday with a company. They have 120 staff and they have already cancelled their lease. So they have just gone, we're going remote hereforth. I think.
Oh, wow.
120 staff and they're going remote, and they're in the digital space.
Yeah.
Yeah, blew that.
Timely from Dunedin, Ryan Baker, another Ryan who I used to go to school with. They're quite famous for being remote only. So they proved it beforehand. This is proving it to people now. Is any other stories or thoughts or news on the wider subject?
Yeah, I think that's right. I think we're going to see a significant impact to business real estate, because I think companies are going to realize that they can work remotely. I think the other thing we're going to see is we're going to see a shift more to leaders rather than managers, because I think the managers aren't going to be successful. They're not going to be able to get stuff across the line managing their people remotely the way they used to do it, reaching out and touching people and constantly being in control of everything. Whereas the leaders that just create an environment for their people, their teams are going to skyrocket, and the executive leadership team is going to be like, yeah, we need more of these leaders and less of those managers, which we've been talking about for like 10, 15 years, but hasn't really happened, because in most office spaces, the managers can force their teams to be successful by managing that way, if they can literally walk around and intimidate their people into doing it the way they need to do it. I think this is going to change that.
I think if it goes, if it goes that way where, companies decide not to have office space, it's a different way of interacting with people. It's a different way of leading people because you don't have the face-to-face every day. So you have to find different ways to connect and understanding and having a team is understanding what motivates people and what they're energized by. So to do that virtually it's different. And people like different forms of connection or different amounts of connection. So you've sort of got to start to understand how does that play with the team. I think we may see a rise or an increase of shared space. So if companies decide, hey, look, we don't need this great big building in the centre of Auckland, but could we change the lease so that we amalgamate a number of different shared spaces, like you see at Smiles Farm, the Beehive, like you see at the Grid in Auckland. So you may start to see a change in the office and more collaboration with other, or sharing of resources with other firms.
Ooh, the collaboration word got mentioned there, Joe. So on a previous call, Joe was talking about a friend who wrote a paper on the cooperation versus collaboration, or that was the outcome, I think, of the PhD.
Yeah, that's right. Yep.
And it just made me think that, yeah, if you go back in the olden days and there was the silo where you sat in your own office within the building, and then it went to the point where there was the manager in their office and the floor, and then it went to the point where it was just open floor, and there were shared spaces, and now I guess we're going to go to shared spaces on steroids in some ways, but the amount of IP sharing and collaboration, like there's the Wynyard Group, which is, I think, Datacom, Air New Zealand, Fonterra. There's 8 companies.
ASB.
Yeah, and that's. I did a bit of work with Kerry, and we're having some discussions around that in the early days. They're looking at getting some sort of specialised AFQY for them set up, but they just went on their own way with some information from me in terms of how to run or how to possibly run their events. But the whole thing about that I said to them was, man, you've got all the business ninjas with all the companies that have got the money to invest in training. How do you then share that beyond the companies that have all got it to the companies that don't have it, so you can raise New Zealand Inc? And that comes back to the collaboration thing, because in the olden days it would be that, oh no, let's hold that secret to ourselves and use it for our own growth and prosperity, and you can fail. So as now, it's I think there's a lot more open sharing. Like I actually put a post on LinkedIn that I deleted first time in I think 12 years, which was probably a bit generic, but in this context it's probably quite right, which is with all the IP sharing and free work being offered, IP will become information, and the only real decider is who you'll work with. You'll choose basically by the person who you want to work with, not by what they can do, because we can all do the same. Like all that information will.
The other question really is, do we start to see an acceleration of the gig economy where, people are perhaps working across different firms? So you talked about, say, Datacom and ASB and Air New Zealand. We're going to get to a point where we've got somebody that's a specialist that's working with all 3 firms rather than being employed specifically with one. Does this, our current situation, does that change the way that people want to approach their work?
Yeah, well, we all want to spend more time at home. I guess there's various mixes and ways of doing it, just like there is a mix of ways of doing it now, but there's probably a new, if we're doing it a mix at this end of the scale. Right now we're doing this end of the scale at this size, so I think there'll be somewhere in the middle. But yeah, I think everyone's mindset will be open to change and difference. Sorry, Vincent?
No, but what I completely, I'd love to see that happening. What I think will probably happen in New Zealand is those companies will never lead there. I think it will be medium-sized companies that will do it, prove that it actually works, and there are plenty of benefits, and those guys might actually come along. Because even with that, COVID-19, we haven't seen many of the large companies really doing something drastically different, just because they're just waiting, right? It's so hard to get things done in there that I think medium-sized companies have will definitely lead in that space of collaboration. And
Yeah, I think you're probably right.
So if I got you right, it comes back to that classic cliche of dinosaurs and cruise ships and speedboats. And what motivates what motivates? So what is it? If it ain't fixed, don't broke it. So I'm going to loop back into my if culture eats strategy for breakfast. What forms culture? It's language and behaviour. And I think language drives the behavior, i.e. what people say then goes into their mind and their subconscious, and it makes them do the actions that follow the words. So if we always talk, if we had a culture where we talk about the wheel's not broke, don't fix it. And what's that classic one that went through LinkedIn a lot? That's the way we've always done it. So we're moving out of that era. We're well and truly past it now, but I think there's, it's like generational things that still hangs in there. I think all the dinosaurs have just been woken up, and we'll start working out how to become speedboats.
I think too, just building on Victoria's point, we still have a history in New Zealand of competing with other New Zealand companies instead of looking out to the world and kind of going, what could we do if we actually all combined our forces? And we get really paranoid about IP, but actually innovation is driven from collaboration, and the more we collaborate, the more innovative we become, and the more we can compete against the world. So often we stop at our country's borders, right, rather than thinking about that bigger picture as a New Zealand Inc.
Before you drop out, Shemaine, your parting thoughts on the subject?
I didn't just quite grasp that last sentence because I was typing a farewell and writing a post on your behalf on LinkedIn.
Well, then you're forgiven.
Yeah, straight, I'm forgiven.
No, well, maybe you won't have time to think about it, but it was the Kiwis compete with Kiwis, and we should be collaborating more and competing with the world.
Nothing like a bit of friendly competition on home base, but definitely the other parts of the world give us that different experience and a different competition. The ones to beat, for at least in the tech space, are France, obviously Silicon Valley in Redmond, and also Germany, engineers. And there are a lot of innovation hubs in terms of research in the UK and Cambridge. Those are the key places I see that we should be competing with in terms of brains.
Okay. Well, we'll let you get to your meeting. Thank you very much.
Yep.
I'm going to LinkedIn while I'm listening.
Sorry, I have to go as well. I have a Zoom meeting with my next door neighbor. Literally the house I can see right there, but we can't, see each other. So I'm having a meeting with him as he's new to New Zealand.
Fair enough. Well, welcome him with a good old Kiwi, I don't know, punch on the shoulder.
Bring him into the next session.
Yeah.
Good idea.
I will. He's actually, he would love that cafe.
Okay.
All right.
Au revoir.
Au revoir.
A bientôt.
A bientôt.
Ryan, just wanted to also add on just building on the comments from Joe and Victoria, is that a lot of the times when we are looking at New Zealand, we are also not diversifying our risk as well as fueling the growth. So, while we have to look at New Zealand's prosperity, which is, a big thing for me, fueling New Zealand's prosperity, a lot of the time that can be done with exports as well as attracting talent. Now, not always we can attract talent to come into New Zealand. So we should be able to leverage the talent outside of New Zealand. Plus, we should be also able to leverage business opportunities in Australia, in the US, in the wider Asia, and so on. So I think one of the growth paths that as an organization in Duco we have taken is, while we'll always grow in New Zealand, let's look at other markets where even if we grow 5 to 10%, that's the growth that will help us diversify our risk, as well as introduce us to new innovation, new collaborations, new partnerships, new ways of working, new learning. So, I agree with what has been said, and I think it is important for New Zealand not just to be inward focused and just breed in. We need to just look beyond our boundaries to grow and learn, and as well as teach in there. So that's pretty cool.
Well, talking about teaching and all this bigger subject, one of the interesting things that always sticks with me is Finland is teaching every citizen about AI. So we've been talking about the school curriculum for it feels like 100 years, and nothing's really changed except New Zealand history has been added in, which is extremely important. But I've always said there should be 4 languages taught at school, which is English, Māori, music, and code. So the code is actually the language of the future. Music is what gives us the ability to focus, and New Zealand English and Māori are 2 languages. And people that talk about, we should learn Mandarin because that's the language of the future because of the number of the population, or you could say Hindi, similarly with India. But the thing that I know is that having learned 3 languages properly, the 4th, 5th, 6th are easy. It's just like when you talk to coders who are, I can code in anything. I swap from this to that to this to that, and it is like you just start learning. It's amazing when you have only know 1 language, your mind is quite stuck and closed. But once you go to 2, it starts opening up. When you go to 3rd, 4th, it's just like, I don't know, it's just like easy as. For example, Māori vowels and Italian vowels are the same. A whole range of Philippine words and Māori words are the same. It's quite amazing. Oh, and one of the funniest things I ever discovered is I was singing Old MacDonald Had a Farm, E-I-E-I-O, when I was being driven home by a Chinese friend. And this first happened in my OE with Italians, and we were like, finished work, it was, 4 o'clock in the morning, 4 a.m, and we were partying, and the stereo broke. So I jokingly said, I'll sing a song because the stereo broke. And I sang Old MacDonald Had a Farm. And they're like, no. And they sang their version of it in Italian. And then we were fighting like, it's an Italian song. No, it's a Kiwi song. And then I was here back in New Zealand getting a lift home from a Chinese friend. And I don't know why, I just started singing it again. And they started singing in Chinese. And they claimed that it was a Chinese song. So it's like, it sort of just made me wonder. It's sort of a little bit different, but yeah, what we learn in schools could be so different. And then of course, don't even get started on the financial literacy. Like, how much better would we be doing if we were taught how to run a business rather than taught algebra? Like, honestly, I know it's meant to keep your options open, and I did maths with stats, I did physics, I did chemistry, I sat in the 90 percentile, and I actually really loved art, but I can't actually, it's not my passion. I've never used it ever since.
You're going down a deep rabbit hole on that one, Ryan, because essentially, why wouldn't we go? Why wouldn't we go a little bit deeper and then just develop the language of the mind, which sets the foundation for everything that you're talking about, which is sort of sitting on top of it and the way that the mind works. As I went into the mental health space and learned more about neurobiology, neuroscience, epigenetics, and quantum physics and how it all tied in, everything that you're talking about is definitely awesome, but there's this underlying layer that if we took the time to acknowledge, and a lot of the suicide prevention places you deal with will acknowledge the same, they're all trying to sort of tap this layer here, which then allows the layers on top that you just talked about before. So I would call that the language of the brain. Why wouldn't we set the strongest foundation possible to allow those other layers, such as education, language, and all that other stuff, to then thrive. So I've had this conversation.
So look at the operating system, not the apps on top of it.
I love that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
you're going down the rabbit hole now. Okay, so I have a whole change the world theory, and part of it is that so I had a born again Christian moment, and I went to church, and I eventually got kicked out of church. No offense to the people that are religious. I am, I guess, I'll say spiritual. I believe in everything. But what part of the change the world theory is, and why I'm wiggling this little thing, is that I have said that we have evolved on the outside for so long that it's all this stuff, and it's time we focus on evolving on the inside. And when I saw the rise of meditation as a result of how busy we all were, I was like, oh, it's coming. And part of it is at university, I was still floored by this point, right? In psychology 111, 112, we got taught about the fact that as we are kids, we can actually see and then talk to other beings up to about the age of 7, because that's the time that our brain develops and we get it coached out of us. So, you know, you say, oh, I'm talking to my imaginary friend, and mum and dad go, don't talk rubbish, Ryan, don't embarrass it in front of people, especially back in the 80s, 90s, or the further back in time, because there once was a time where my nana, who's left-handed, was smacked and told she was a devil's spawn for being left-handed. So she had learned to write with her right hand, and now by the time she passed away, couldn't write with her left hand. So these are the things, how the human beliefs have been what have, I guess, limited us. But if you think about the fact that 7-year-old kids, or up to kids, can see other beings and talk with them, and you think, oh yeah, this is great. One little story at university's got Ryan excited. Well, family friends of ours, so Mark and Danny are the same age as Ryan and Shay, that's my brother, and then their mum had a second marriage. Lynette had Rebecca. So Rebecca was quite isolated because they lived out of Dunedin, and she had an imaginary friend called Caligula, which, if anyone knows her history, is a famous Roman general. So everyone used to go, oh, your sister's nuts, Mark. She's got an imaginary friend. And then one day at Christmas, so Mark, Danny and Rebecca's grandma lives just down the road from our house, in the house that her father built. So that's great granddad. And anyway, they were giving, so Lynette, the mum, is one of 13 kids to grandma. So pretty much 8 kids and 80 grandkids were there for big crowd, right? And they were giving Rebecca shit. Oh, your imaginary friend Caligula. And she turned around and said, Caligula says you should stop harassing me, or you should leave me alone. And they're like, ooh, and I can't remember how it started, how the connection started, but she ended up saying, well, Caligula said to Granny to pull up your trouser and show them the scar on your leg, because that's when you came running up the front path. See, she went running up the front path and tripped over before you got to my arms, and it's a scar. And the grandmother started crying, and everyone looked around and they're like, what scar? Because she'd never told the story, but she knew the story. So she started asking questions of her granddaughter to her father, who was a ghost, Caligula, and it became like all around Dunedin, everyone was talking about it, because there's like 80 people that went away from this going, oh! So then you think about people like my father, who are complete, you can't see it, touch it, it's not real, atheist type guy. He absolutely is a fan of that program, not Murder, She Wrote, Sensors, where they solve cases with and whether that's real or not, I don't know. But yeah, it's like, it also leads back to that proof that if we evolve on the inside, work out how to, and yeah, so it's quite a fantastical situation, but I'll shut up because I've spoken so long.
I was just going to talk about, I'm not sure if you guys have heard about the Resilience Project. It is a guy in Australia, it's Australian based. I've seen him speak at a corporate event, but I'm now involved with a school. So they've brought they've brought it to New Zealand. The Tanya Dalton Foundation is sponsoring 4 schools on the North Shore to roll out the Resilient Project curriculum in schools. And it's based on 3 principles of understanding, gratitude, empathy, and mindfulness. So it's about teaching kids those three things and how to develop the tools to help them with anxiety and mental health. And so they've just started it literally, and it's going to be rolled into the curriculum. There's full curriculum for primary and intermediate. And so you talked about the tools and developing the mind of kids. I see this as a really good way for children to learn how to navigate, challenges. And I listened to one of the podcasts yesterday, and that type of stuff's obviously really important right now with everything we're going through. So hopefully, if the pilot is successful, they will look at rolling it out to more schools and maybe a community. So in Australia, I think he's got 600 schools, and they looked at Townsville and they rolled it out to their entire town to see whether there was going to be an improvement in mental health statistics. And there was a significant improvement. So, and he does work with the NRL, AFL, the netball team, the cricket team, a lot of the corporates, and that's how I've seen it. So, excited to see how that works. My daughter's at one of the schools. I'm the board chair of one of the lead school, and my daughter's at that school, and I'm starting to see the language and talking about it and using it in class. And I've seen some of the mindfulness stuff last week when they were at home, or the week before when they were first at home. So I know that there's another mental health advocate in New Zealand that's really interested in this stuff. So it's sort of watch this space.
Well, that's in short the Teach EQ in schools.
Yeah.
That's pretty amazing, isn't it? My little comment is a guy mentioned, he said, any human today knows more about the world than was it Socrates or Pilates did back then. So one of the greatest thinkers, but in terms of what we do and know in the world, every time a baby is born, that baby is going to have more information and a bigger world view than the baby born yesterday, or especially hundreds of years ago. And it's just making me think, we're on this progression of adding information to our world, and now we're getting into that space. So, how many years or 100 years or generations will it be before, yes, we are using telepathy or ESP or whatever it is that enables us to communicate versus Zoom. But
that's something that Singularity University talk about a lot.
Oh, really?
Is that is the singularity ultimately, is when human and machine become indistinguishable, because actually your artificial intelligence and the kind of external intelligence is, it's an interesting perspective on it.
Okay.
There was an experiment, I think 2 or 3 years ago, I saw, where they were able to catch the brain waves and then program it to the actions of the machine. So basically, for less than $2,000 or $3,000, you can actually get equipment that you can have on your head, and then imagine things saying, go to bedroom 1, go to bedroom 2. And then once you capture those brain waves, you can actually link it to the action on your wheelchair or something. So when you just think, the wheelchair gets the message using an API through the device, and it takes you to bedroom 1 or bedroom 2.
I've done a very simple version of that, where I had a thing on my head that was capturing my brainwaves and got it to control the robot. So when you concentrated, the robot spun, and when you stopped concentrating, it stopped. And that technology has been around for 6, 7, 8 years. It's amazing.
I was going to say, I went to the launch of, I think Nous is the product. Can't remember, never remember the name, but it's a New Zealand company, and it was their launch and open to investing. And I was interested because it's this headband technology. And what the thing was, they had a lady there who's a paraplegic and sister of the guy who was creating it. And at the time, it was one of 6 around the world that was being designed to solve a specific problem. They were trying to create a headband that would do the work for the paraplegic rather than them using the wand off their head. And they had a thing there, and they said, yeah, if you want to try it out, you can. And what it is that everyone can put a headband on, and it would control the remote control car. So I just like went and stood in the queue before the speaker had finished, so I could be first. And I was just going, wow, how does this work? How does this work? How does this work? So basically, they put the headband on me, and when it was sort of on, the car just went boomfa and smashed into the wall and broke. And the lady was like, we've never seen the car move that fast before. I'm like, God, you must have been thinking intensely. I was like, well, I was. I've been trying to work out how this works. And she said, well, it's your intensity of thought that makes the speed of the car. And we didn't get the chance to tell you how to turn it. So there was luckily there was like 3 or 4 cars and 3 or 4 headbands. But yeah, the front wheel broke off this remote control car sort of thing. But yeah, it was the intensity of thought. But I've since bought one of those Muse 2 things.
Yeah.
It's still in the packet because I got all excited about it. And then I was like, is this another one of those Google situations where actually all of your brainwaves are actually going back to the mothership? And, it's like, I don't know if it's I keep on wanting to go and do that DNA test, but I don't want to give my DNA to somebody else like Ancestry or Google. Like, but look at the things that, sort of, I always laugh when I read that comment from Sergey Brin, I think it was, we won't ever be evil. It's like, you keep on doing these things. But anyway, yeah. So has anyone else done the headband thing or something like it?
I've done something like it, Ryan, and that's where I got came to know about this.
Yeah.
They can also read brainwaves now. So they've done experiments where people look at, say, a tiger on a screen, and then they can recreate visually what the person was seeing, which is the first step to really being able to mind read, if you like, and capture images. So
the videos of those are actually they're pretty impressive because it shows the way our brain interprets patterns to be able to. So when the image starts appearing, it's kind of a blob and it starts to form something, and it might look kind of like a dog or a tiger or a cow or something, and then it slowly solidifies into a tiger. So yeah, it was a Chinese company that did it, and it was really successful. There's also a company out of Hong Kong now that if you think words, they can use the brainwave analysis to actually show the words appear on a screen, which is a significant advancement in the space. I will say, so there's several thinkers in this area that are referring to this device as the fact that we're already cyborgs. Because Ryan, like you said, 50 years ago, we had to have all the information up in our head. Well, now we don't. I mean, even if we just think about phone numbers, 20 years ago, you had your family's phone numbers memorized. Now you don't memorize any of the phone numbers. So we only have so much memory space in our head to be able to hold raw information. This device has become the extension of our brain for that raw information, which potentially has freed up our brain to do more interesting things like the meditation to make us more aware of our surroundings, more aware of the world around us. So yeah, there's an entirely, it's a kind of a hobby of mine to follow neuroscientists and conscious experts out of the UK and the US. I listened to several different podcasts on it. It's really interesting work that they're doing.
Well, interesting on the memory thing. So when I used to do the old AFQY in person, I would go around and introduce everyone in the room by name, title, sometimes little stories, jokes. And there would always be the people, 60% were new first timers, and they'd be, oh, how do you do that? Is it mega memory? Is it this? Is it? It's like, no, it's just memory. And a guy sent me a link. I can't remember. I can't even think of his name now, ironically, or the name, but it's some name where there are 37 people in the world that are diagnosed fully with the ability. And what it talks about is you give them a date and they can give you a run through of what they did. But what I don't know is to what detail. But if you say something like I have a video graphic memory, I guess you'd call it. And when I did my study, I would just read the page in the book to answer the question, if that's what it was. Where's that physics equation? Oh, that's on, do it and boom. So I'd never study because it was in there. It used to piss everyone off. It has waned over time. I think that's probably enjoying life, getting old. The machine gets a bit worn out. But if you trigger something, the whole video comes back to my head. So, for example, when I came home from my OE, and you'd be quite surprised by this one, I had gone to the All Blacks versus Australia at the Stadium Australia when we lost 32-28. And it was 110,000 people just after the Olympics, and they've since reduced the stadium size. But I went as a guest of Byron Callagher, so I was sitting with all the wags and whatnot with a mate of mine, and he was the one that came down from Queenstown to Dunedin, and we're sitting there having a beer at home and talking about our travels, because I'd been off to the UK for a number of years and come back, and I'd forgotten about it. We're talking about all sorts of stuff and the more present stuff, and again, do you know, what about the All Blacks game? And it all just come back to me like a video. If something else had triggered it, it'd all come back to me. But it sort of made me think about your point about the we only have a certain amount of memory, and then you have to think back. You know, people used to say you only use 10% of your brain, and part of that is you'd have the bit that don't work are the ones that you've turned off because someone said you're no good at maths, you can't do maths. You go, okay, I'm no good at maths. And it's, I won't have read or listened to half the stuff you have, Sean, but I was quite intrigued to sort of, I was actually thinking about going back and studying psychology specifically in this area to understand it more, because, yeah, you got to go. Sorry, Victoria. You can say goodbye, jump in there.
Bye, everybody. Sorry, I've got to take off.
That's all right.
Have a good day.
Oh, hey, before you go,
Yeah.
you go, we've got a time and date set, haven't we?
Tomorrow, 10.
Thank you.
See you then.
Okay. I better put that calendar.
Yeah.
Oh shit! Got a clash. That's unusual. Yeah. Whew. Okay.
So it's not raw memory though. So the thing is when they talk about 10% of your brain, which is obviously a little bit of a fallacy, but so our brains are designed to problem solve and pattern match, right? And if so the raw information that we carry, it's like, you know, carrying a history book around with you that has every date of every prime minister, you know, starting and stopping of every prime minister. That's not necessarily useful information, except maybe once or twice during pub quiz night, right? So this gives us access to raw information that we don't get any value from, except for those little times when we want to do a pattern matching or a problem solving. It's, you know, it's not uncommon, Ryan, as we get older, that the neuroplasticity of our brain actually gets harder. So our brain we don't build the memory pathways the way we used to. We don't learn the patterns the way we used to. There is some technology that helps to reset some of that neuroplasticity. I actually have a set of headphones here that sends a low voltage, low amperage electrical signal into my brain for 20 minutes and resets the neuroplasticity in my brain to back when I was 18 years old. And I have actually I've tested it and seen a result from it. So, I mean, you can go back, but again, it's learning new skills, problem solving, and pattern matching, and then using this for what it's good for, which is raw information.
Sean, what differences could you feel before you started using it, and then like how do you know that it's working? Can you actually sense and feel that?
Yeah. So
you want to chug beer?
So no. So I throughout my life I've always wanted to play guitar. I'm not musically inclined. My wife plays 9 different instruments and plays violin at least 10 years ago. She played violin at concert level of violin. I'm not any good. She has tried to sit down with me probably 10 times every year since we got together to teach me how to play guitar, even just simple chords on a guitar. And the problem is that I can see it in my head, but I can't get my fingers and hands to do.
You to go? Okay.
What I want my brain to do. So I started using this, and what I would do is I would put it on for 20 minutes, and then for the first hour afterwards, I would sit down and have her, and at the very beginning of it, I'd have her explain to me 2 or 3 chords, and I would practice those 2 or 3 chords for an hour, and then I wouldn't do any more practice for a week, and I would come back and try it again. Which, I mean, that's kind of the pattern, unfortunately, because I'm doing so many other things. Usually when I would sit down with her, she'd teach me a couple chords, and a week later we'd come back and I'd be like,
Start all over again. Yeah.
I can't do it. For the very first time, I could do it.
Wow.
And even till today, and I probably, with the lockdown and the new baby that we just had and everything, I haven't touched, she hasn't done any teaching with me in probably 3 months. I picked up the guitar with my 4-year-old yesterday, and I thought about the chords she told me to, and my hand just naturally fell into the position of the chords, and I was able to do the chords, and I was literally shocked, like jump up shock, had to go show my wife, because I have absolutely no musical inclination at all. So the fact that I was able to remember that my body could remember that chords, that tells me that's doing something.
That's
I'm
amazing.
going to throw something in there for you both.
I'm going to have to go, unfortunately, because I've got a 9:30, but I'm really enjoying the conversation.
Yeah, shall we pick this up? I'll make this part of the post and say that tomorrow we'll be talking more about it.
Thanks for sharing that, Sean. Sorry I have to go. It's a customer meeting. Otherwise,
no worries. See you soon.
See you. Thanks.
Are you sticking, Sean? Or are you?
Well, I've got something I've got to go to in about 5 minutes, but
okay.
Yeah.
All it was this comment, so you can think about it till tomorrow. Remembering names is not a gift.
No.
Remembering anything is not a gift. It's a skill, right? And it's a muscle that I never used to be able to do it. I read a thing that made me want to do it, and therefore people that come up to me and go, I can't remember names. How do you do it? It's like, well, first thing is stop telling yourself you can't. So my question was, how much of it actually was this happening, and versus how when you couldn't do it, the first few times being husband and wife, that it didn't work, they become that thing, and the language was, oh, it's a waste of time, you're probably not going to remember, let's give it another go, but you're a really terrible student, Sean, or something like that, whatever it might not have been that bad, but you get a thing in your head going, because the cortisol dump, and you reduce your IQ by 16 points, you go, oh, I don't want to forget again, oh, that's terrible, my wife probably thinks I don't love her, or something like that. And this cycle goes on. So for the years that was a cycle of reinforcing the pattern of not remembering. Then you have this headband, you go, wow, the headband, I can remember because I got the headband on. And you changed it, and in that instant, it did that. So that's psychosomatic aspect, but that's, I don't know if you've done if your research or anything covers that sort of stuff, but
look, you're absolutely right. There is this, so your description is more poignant, but it's kind of the placebo effect. Like the fact that I'm using the headband is like taking a sugar pill that I've told myself the sugar pill is going to allow me to be able to do it. So there is a whole massive amount of research in this area. In fact, there were even some blind studies that were done where they used the headphones, and it gives you a tingling feeling when you put it on, because you can feel the electrical current going through. But they did that, but not in the range that would actually impact the brain. And they saw enough of an improvement with the real headband that most U.S. professional sports teams and Olympic teams are now using it for muscle memory, and to retrain new muscle memory that they want to do. I'll send you a link.
You send me the link to the actual. I might go and buy a pair.
Well, it's massive. But to your point, the placebo. I went in skeptical. So I'm a skeptic. I like new things, and I like new opportunities, but I'm skeptical about everything I go into. You're absolutely right that there is that. I've trained myself to think throughout my life that I was no good at music because everybody told me I was no good at music. The most poignant thing for me was every time I sat down with my wife for her to teach me guitar, I mean, within a minute, I was frustrated because I couldn't get my chord hand in place. I could see it in my head, but I couldn't get my hand to do within 5 minutes, couldn't get my hand to do what she was telling me to do. when I put the headband on, I don't know if it released it, or, I mean, the scientific papers refer to it as resetting the neuroplasticity in your brain. But my hand was more apt to fall into the position that I was thinking in my brain. And it wasn't like, I mean, I went into it every time I sat down with her. I was like, yeah, I really want to do it this time. I have this, I want to play the opening chords to Shine On You Crazy Diamond. And so I'm going to learn the chords just so I can play that one entry. And there was a difference, enough of a difference that I think, even if it's a placebo effect, I'm willing to live with the results.
Cool. Well, hey, look, I better get going too.
Yep,
you got to get going. So let's pick this up. I'll make this a subject of the post and get everyone warmed up to the concept for tomorrow. So cheers, buddy. Talk to you soon.
Sure.
Oh, and send me the link for the headphones. I want to buy some.
Yep.
Cheers.